All right, welcome back to the video, guys. I wanted to go over a cybersecurity concept, or maybe just an all-around IT concept, but I learned it specifically when I was going over infosec years ago, and it's a concept I really like personally. Very simple, but I don't know. I just like this concept, and I kind of talked about it before when I was talking about I think it was confidentiality when I made my CIA triad video. I'll link that video into this video as well, because I'm pretty sure it was that one. But we're going to break down very quickly. This should be quick. A concept called privilege creep. Very key concept if you want to learn about infosec, and I would say really specifically IT. I want to make a quick side comment because I keep switching between the two. I'm going to refer more to info tech or IT over tech because tech, I know it's blowing up right now. That's a whole wave and all that stuff. Tech does not inherently mean info tech. And honestly, my concepts, while I do like to talk about tech things en masse, I personally work in info tech. So I think I'm gonna start making that, that separation over like general tech stuff, what's specifically info tech, and then specifically, the specialties of infotech like infosec and stuff like that. Because I don't want to keep. Hopefully, that's not confusing anybody, but I wanted to be sure. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get on with it. So, to secure data requires multiple layers of protection, not only from the outside world or what's called the wild, which is just like the larger internet, but also from the people that let you inside the organization. One of the main issues that can lead to the rise of internal threats is called privilege creep, and that's what we're going to go over today. Privilege creep refers to the gradual accumulation of access rights or permissions beyond what a person needs to actually do their job. This tends to happen a lot with employees when they change roles, when they change different responsibilities within an organization. I'd say it's very common. I've seen this a lot with people fresh out of undergrad. A good amount of time, not always, but a good amount of time, if they work for a consulting firm or sometimes some type of banking institution, their very first job is usually a rotational program where they rotate between three, maybe four different job titles, and then they move into like a permanent job title and they stick to. And I haven't heard of it happening there, but in my mind, it makes sense that's something that could happen if you were to, revolve from maybe some type of project management team to, let's say, an engineering team or a DevOps team, to maybe a security team, to an IT service management team or operations team, stuff like that. I don't know how those things are actually conducted, but it makes sense to me. Like if you're rotating between those different type of teams and spaces, it makes sense that you would have different permissions you would need to actually do your job. And if the IT team, the person or people who control access management and your permissions so that you can see certain things in the system, if they ain't on their job, then you'll be able to see and access stuff you don't need to access. So that's pretty much the whole concept there. Employees changing positions, temporary assignments becoming permanent, and lack of regular access reviews are common reasons why privilege creep happens in the first place. So an employee who starts in a junior role and moves up to a senior role may retain access to systems and data from their previous position or maybe a few positions down, leading to unnecessary and potential risky access permissions, which can lead to some other situations down the line. So it's important to understand privilege creep and to avoid it for a few key reasons. First off, excessive privileges increase the risk of insider threats and data breaches, which that's an inside and outside job type of thing. Because obviously insider threats are people that you let into your organization, usually employees, you can even say contractors. But if they have more permissions than necessary to do their job, then chances are they will, if they're screwed up people and I don't know, you slighted them in some way or they feel slighted in some type of way, they may take advantage of their permissions and, just do something crazy to destroy the system or to harm a specific person in the system, place a logic bomb that wipes the whole system clean or, causes a data exfiltration incident, stuff like that. You never know. Some of these people are too good at what they do. But then you have data breaches, which is usually from the outside in. But let's say if someone's hacked their way into the corporate system, they may take advantage of the fact that a person at a specific job or a specific level of the company has higher permissions or even lower permissions than necessary, and they'll take advantage of that to steal data, hold it for ransom, stuff like that. The main character I think is like one of the best comparisons for this, just to like paint this picture to make this like easier to get, is Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars, which I'm sure he doesn't need too much of an explanation. You know, Star Wars is super popular. You know, as someone who didn't read the comics, I'm not gonna go too in depth here, so we're just gonna stick to the basics. And you know, Anakin started out as a Jedi Padawan. He was older than the rest of the Padawan. He started late, but he started off as a Padawan nonetheless. And you know, over his time, especially in the Clone Wars, he gradually gained more responsibility, notoriety, therefore access with the Jedi Order into certain places of the temple, as well as being able to go like on missions by himself, call more shots with the clones, led his own platoon, stuff like that. And eventually he became a Jedi Master, or rather a Jedi Knight. Technically not a master, even though, you know, later on with the Clone Wars animated series, they showed that he had an apprentice of his own, which technically, you know, gave him not the right, but people would start referring to him as master, because, you know, if you have an apprentice, they have to refer to you as master. And that means even other Jedi Masters start to refer to you as Master Skywalker, Master Windu, stuff like that. But that's semantics. Anakin became one of the most powerful and most popular and most well-known, and also one of the most successful Jedi generals during primarily the Clone Wars. Even despite their wisdom, the Jedi Council, whom, you know, they didn't handle Anakin too well, I agree to that. And despite their wisdom and their policies, they actually allowed Anakin's growing influence and power, which led to unchecked access to critical information and decision-making abilities on Anakin's behalf, which him going against the grain was well known. So even if they tried to check him, maybe it wouldn't have worked. You also got taken into consideration Obi-Wan was not the right master for Anakin. But again, this ain't a Star Wars review, so let's keep it pushing. So not only that, but while the Jedi Council was smart enough to attempt to leverage Anakin's connection to Palpatine to spy on Palpatine, this is just, an example, by the way, obviously referring to Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And while the Jedi Council was smart enough to attempt to leverage Anakin's connection to Palpatine to spy on Palpatine, they weren't curious enough to bother investigating, in my opinion, why Anakin and Palpatine were as close as they were in the first place. And I think that's key, which also kind of led to the Jedi's downfall after the Clone Wars era, which also brought an end to the Clone Wars era. Because while it was the Jedi's responsibility to protect the Republic, they still weren't politicians in their own right. They really weren't supposed to interact with politicians more than they truly needed to. Now, of course, that rule was broken, because then you have situations like, how did Leia end up with Senator Organa, Bail Organa? You know what I'm saying? That only happened because Obi-Wan and Bail had a close relationship. But when it came down to it, there was supposed to be a very strong distinction between the Jedi Order and the Republic, as well as the politicians that served the Republic. Establishing personal relationships like that to that degree, I'm surprised the Jedi Council allowed it for a multitude of reasons, especially because I rewatched the Clone Wars series again recently, and they were actually suspecting Palpatine for some time. Spoilers, I guess. But the council, more so Yoda and Windu, were suspecting Palpatine of being like part of the dark side or having like a bad intention for the Jedi Order at large long before he issued Order 66. So I'm like, I may have to watch it again, but I remember watching it for the umpteenth time, like maybe a month or so back, and saw that, and I'm like, well, they could have prevented their downfall right there, but I don't know, their decision making was weird. But ultimately, Anakin's transition to Darth Vader exemplifies how privilege creep can result in an insider threat, because he had extensive knowledge of the Jedi Order, the people that were part of it. He grew up with them, whether they accepted him or not. He was kind of an outcast pretty much throughout the Order, surprisingly. And his access, because he was still successful, especially in the war, his access allowed him to play a pivotal role in the downfall of the Jedi Order. But that all happened because the Jedi Order, primarily the Council, left his access and behavior way too unchecked. again, especially with Obi-Wan, I think part of the reason people say Obi-Wan was not a good master for Anakin was not only because of how he treated Anakin, and he had a tendency to kind of just brush off Anakin's behavior and be very robotic. Like, if you want someone that truly embodied the like robotic and kind of dogmatic personality and traits of the Jedi Order en masse, that's Obi-Wan. And when I rewatched episode 1, Phantom Menace, even though a lot of people don't like it, I like it, always have. You can kind of tell that from early on because of the comments that he made towards Qui-Gon when Qui-Gon didn't want to be on the council because he didn't necessarily always, if ever, agree with the decision making and thought process of the Jedi Council. Obi-Wan was always like, if you simply follow their way of thinking, you would be on the council as well. You know, you just need to stop pushing back. And I think that showed a major flaw in Obi-Wan's Kenobi in hindsight, like once you watch it again, as someone that knows more of the story. But it also goes to show like why he was able to get on the council and Qui-Gon wasn't, with pretty much no contest, from my understanding at least. So yeah, he wasn't the best versus Qui-Gon. By Qui-Gon already being a black sheep of the Jedi Order because of where he placed his actual loyalties, which was more to the Force than to the Jedi Order itself. Anakin more closely aligned with him, and he also wouldn't have allowed Anakin to go off the hinges as much as he did, which is something Obi-Wan got way too used to. But again, because of Anakin's success during the war era and just his antics overall, I think Obi-Wan is just one of those things. Again, he kind of just shut down about it. He had a different way of shutting down about multiple things, and you know, some things were against the benefit of Anakin, but Anakin may have viewed the fact that he was always successful in battle. He saved Obi-Wan's skin multiple times. That was probably a version of Obi-Wan shutting down that actually worked in Anakin's favor. So that's why Anakin didn't think anything of it, and that's probably also why the rest of the Jedi Masters didn't think anything of it as well. Primarily the Masters amongst the Council. So just like the Jedi, they could have benefited from stricter access controls, or not audits, you know, because this is a cybersecurity thing. You gotta do audits in real life. You know, kind of just double checking or making sure that people play their role and they don't stray too far left, too far right. Organizations today need to implement strong privilege management practices to prevent similar insider threats. Because again, just like episode 3, when Anakin made that pivot from Jedi to Sith, sometimes the biggest threats aren't the people on the outside trying to break in. Sometimes it's the people that you let in that try to do the greatest harm to you. You know what I'm saying? And you gotta be cautious of the people that you let close to you, in addition to those from the outside, you know, just trying to be nosy and be up on you in your business to begin with. So it adds another angle to how the Jedi Council's distant behavior towards Anakin led to their demise at the end of the Clone Wars era. But hopefully, not straying too far from the point of the video, that helps paint a better picture of privilege creep. You start off as a rookie, you work your way up to a master or pro, whatever the case is, but just because you are at the top of the food chain does not inherently mean you should be able to access anywhere, go anywhere, do anything. When people do that, that's when you run into some serious trouble. And again, that applies not only to your professional life, but to your personal life also. So take that as you will. But I'll go ahead and leave that video here, guys. If you have any comments, feedback, hopefully I didn't stray too far off subject. I was nerding out there. Whenever that happens, that gets really hard to control sometimes. But yeah, guys, I'll go and leave that there. Any comments, questions, feedback, suggestions, anything like that for me, go ahead and share that with me in the comment section below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.